Graham DeLaet is joining us. As you know, Graham, a multiple-time winner amongst the professional ranks. Graham also was a member of the International President's Cup team. He's competed in the Olympics as well. It was in 2016 representing Canada. This week, he is working for TSN. Graham is also doing featured group coverage for NBC Sports, and he's joining us live from just outside his room today at this 124th U.S. Open. Graham, first of all, thanks for your time, my friend. I know you were on the golf course yesterday. Dom saw you walking around there. What are your impressions of the course as yet?
Well, I mean, it looks like a massive test for these guys. There's no question about it. I played in 2014, and I just remember the whole time playing like scared, in all honesty. I mean, it's every single shot. You have to be so aware of all the danger that's lurking, and it's hard not to play defensive out here. But it really starts with getting the ball in the fairway. They are pretty generous, but you have to get it in the fairway. The natural fescue roughs have grown up a little bit since in the last 10 years. And it's just hard to, you can, half the time kind of get it up near the green, but to get it on the dance floor from that rough is pretty impossible, really. And I mean, then coming into these greens, that's the whole talk, is how much smaller these greens really play than their green size because of all these slopes and runoffs, and the firmer and faster that they get, the more difficult that becomes. And then obviously it's the test when you do miss, and there's a little bit of grain now in these surrounds that wasn't here back when I played in 2014 with it being Bermuda grass now. So just such a difficult test all the way. And then the putting is as well. Some of the players talking about how they have to be defensive with putts and have putts that you're really not even trying to hole sometimes. You're just trying to make sure you can get down in two. So it's a scary test, but it'll be a fun one to watch.
To the point you were just making, who did you get an opportunity, if I may, to follow yesterday, and what did you see relative to what they were working on, maybe tight little chips or putting from different quadrants of the green to relate to what you just described?
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. I walked the front nine in the afternoon, and I just kind of bounced across a bunch of different groups and chatted with players because there was a lot of waiting going on, in all honesty. Chris Kirk and Grayson Sigg and Seb Straka was kind of like the Georgia Bulldog group. They had quit after 9 holes because it was almost a 4-hour 9. So that just goes to show you how much time the players are taking around the greens. And it's trying to figure out what they're going to play, especially with the grain, as I said, because it's tough with the 60 into the grain because you kind of have to get ball first and kind of have a downward blow. So you're not able to get much, loft on the shot. But if you try to keep something low and it's into the grain with whether it's with a putter or a hybrid or a 3-wood or whatever guys are playing, it chatters into that grain, as you know, and it's so difficult to get the ball all the way up those slopes. And a lot of times they come back to you. So that really is going to be the true test. I heard Tiger saying he was thinking about possibly a 4-iron bump and run. So we're going to see some shots that we obviously don't see week in and week out on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because obviously last time in 14 that you were alluding to, Martin used the putter so often around the surrounds. But if there is more grain there than what he had at that time, you just talked about Tiger maybe employing a 4-iron, which I thought was incredibly cool insight, would be fun to see. Do you expect to see that kind of variety maybe with more wedges because you have to, because how do you work around these obstacles?
Yeah, when I was walking around yesterday, I saw Brad Faxon out there, and he said that Mackenzie Hughes is a 63-degree wedge in his bag. So I think guys are kind of, trying a little bit of everything. And, that's why this practice round, like I said yesterday, took so long, because this is a new test. Everyone's trying to learn here as fast and quickly as they can. And, when you go over to the practice greens, in the practice area, it's not quite the same. And you have to get most of your work done on the golf course here, which is a little bit different than it is week in and week out, where you can kind of, hit the same types of shots that you would see on the golf course because the grass is kind of just so standard. But it's going to be, like I said, it's just a test, and it's a test of willpower as much as and mental strength as it is your game, because everybody's going to hit that one shot that goes up and comes back to their feet, or they try to drill it through the grain and it actually stays rolling pretty well, and then it goes up and over and rolls over the other side. So I don't think you're going to see absolute carnage, with like nines and tens like we do see sometimes the U.S. Opens, where I think we're going to see a lot of bogeys and doubles pile up very quickly on this golf course.
Ooh, that is a telling insight right there. Graham, is there a place where the players can breathe? You talked about a little more width off the tee, and I know it's kind of touch and go with the wiregrass if you get into that rough, but is there a place where mentally, emotionally, you can let down the cauldron for a second, or is it every single shot you have to stay 110% focused?
I honestly think that the only golf shot on the course that's, you can call it easy, is the tee shot at one. I mean, most guys are hitting a long iron or a hybrid, and it kind of eases you into this, and it's almost a false sense of reality, because you get up to your second shot and that green, just everything's falling off, and you all of a sudden it's like you're punched in the face, and you realize for the next 17 and a half holes, like, you have to be on top of your game. Like, even the par fives, you can score on them, but they're far from gimmies. Like you see sometimes, you know, on the PGA Tour, where you stand on the tee box, you're like, okay, I got to make a birdie here. And they're just not like that. I mean, you have to hit quality golf shots just to give yourself a chance at birdies on the par fives even.
When you had your last U.S. Open here in 2014, Graham, what was the hole that at that time, when you finished, what was the hole you were like, I hope I never see this hole again? What was the one that just gave you fits?
What's funny is when I was walking around yesterday, I didn't remember a lot of the golf holes until I stood on the tee. And then it's like you almost get this like sense of fear that comes back into you. And it was like one of the few times I'm like, because I'm now doing a lot of media, and I'm at a lot of these golf courses. I'm like, man, I'd love to play this golf course right now. It looks so good. This one, I'm glad I'm not playing this week, because it brings back some bad memories, in all honesty.
Oh, yeah. And the challenges that await. I love what you just said. Like the one shot maybe all week is the tee shot on number one. And then from there, it just kicks off. Because I think the third hole, short, maybe drivable, but if you go long, it's brutal to try to get down in two if you're going to try to pick up. Look at this. So what I am interested, though, I'm gonna go to the end of the book. With Graham DeLaet, when we look at hole 16, for example, 536 yards, par four. Could you take us through, if I may tap into your expertise here, take us through, and we'll have it if you look at your return, if you can see it. You're going to see what we're showing to the world here on 16, 17, and 18 to get a sense of what it's like to try to close out around here, and on Sunday afternoon to try to hold on.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously with a par four playing that long, it puts so much pressure on the tee shot, because you know that you have to hit the fairway. And if you don't, you're probably not making par, in all honesty. So and you know it's coming. Like, that's the thing. As you're walking up to the tee box, you already know, I have to hit this tee shot in the fairway. There's obviously those bunkers, and the bunkers are actually probably the miss out here most of the time if you are going to miss the fairway. They're pretty flat bottom. They don't have big bunker faces, most of them, so you can sometimes play from there. But and then coming into this green, you're now hitting like between probably a 6-iron and a 4-iron hybrid, maybe depending on the wind, into a green that just doesn't really receive those golf balls well, and that's on a Tuesday. So I could imagine on a Sunday when we come in, is if we do avoid the rain and they put minimal water on these greens just to keep them alive, it's going to be a pretty scary second shot into this green.
No doubt. Okay, let's take us forward to par 3 17th.
Yeah, this is actually a cool hole. This is another one where, you have a little bit of a breather. It's not that long on the card, but and hitting this green is probably more doable than a lot of them. It's a little bit more flat in the middle of the green. But when you do miss, especially that bunker on the left, it's deep, and everything kind of runs away there. So it's just getting the ball in the middle of the green here. If you're forced to try to make a birdie coming down the stretch, and you got to take one on here, you can definitely make a 4 or 5. But for most players in the field, you hit this into the middle of the green, and you just kind of take what it gives you and try to make a 2-putt par and get out of there.
Incredible what you just heard there, folks. Graham DeLaet's talking about 4s and 5s at a par 3, but it is the 17th hole at Pinehurst, number 2. And then they have to finish at the challenging par 4 18th.
Yeah, one of the difficult things here about 18 is the tee shot is kind of semi-blind. So it's like you can't really see exactly where the the right bunker kind of ends on the right side there. So you have to really get a good target in the background. And if you hit a good tee shot here, the hole isn't another one. It's not that long, especially compared to some of these par fours out here. So if you do hit a good tee shot, you can actually turn this into a hole where you could possibly make a birdie in the 72nd hole. But another one, this green is just so drastic. That back right bunker, or the bunker that's right at the green there, it's so deep. It's almost impossible to get up and down from there. And there's fall offs again everywhere. So the key to the two par fours, 16, 18, is getting your tee shot in the fairway to give yourself a chance, and then trying to hit the green. And, there's the other thing too. I was talking with some of the caddies, especially yesterday. They're like, hitting greens out here is going to be difficult. There's no question about it. But sometimes almost better to be off the green, chipping back up the hill where you're back up, because even on the grain on the greens, if you're chipping into the grain, you can really control the golf ball. It stops pretty quick because when it lands into that grain, it digs a little bit, and then obviously going into the grain, rolling into the grain, the ball doesn't get away from you. So sometimes better off chipping, from 15, 20 feet off the green uphill to a pin, as opposed from being 20 feet above the hole and having a treacherous little putt that we've seen a lot of guys in the practice rounds putting balls off the greens. And in practice rounds, you see that probably more than you do in a tournament situation, because the pins, they're saving all the pin placement. So sometimes the pins in practice rounds get a little bit too drastic. But that being said, I've seen some balls being put off the green already here this week.
Amazing stuff. Okay, so last question I have for you, Graham. We very, very much appreciate the tremendous amount of time that you've given us today. Is there a player or a couple players that you think have the combination of factors, whether it's all around the green, whether it's scrambling, total driving, et cetera? Are there a couple players that you think are perfectly suited moving forward this week?
Well, I mean, Scotty Scheffler is perfectly suited, I think, for pretty much any golf course, but especially this one. I mean, when you start adding up all the skill sets necessary, I mean, he pretty much does it all with his driving. His iron play is so important here to try to hit into these tiny little targets of greens. And then his short game is it really is as good as anybody's out here. And it's going to be tough for anybody to make putts. And if there's ever been one downfall of Scotty's game, which he's obviously turned around quite a bit here in the last 6 to 12 months, was his putting. But it's a bit of an equalizer out here because it's so tough to make putts on fast greens because there's so much break involved. So there's more importance probably on the ball striking in the short game.
Dude, you are awesome. Thank you very, very much. Have fun this week doing featured group coverage for NBC Sports. Always your work at TSN is appreciated far and wide, and we very much appreciate the massive amount of time you gave us. It's good to see you.
All right. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.